Thank you for taking the time to be here with me.
Oh, you're very welcome. No, I grew up in Syracuse, New York. And when I was 18, I came to Nantucket as a college kid for the summer months. And once I was here, I really fell in love with Nantucket. And so after getting out of school, I decided that in 1972, I was going to move to Nantucket and make it my home. So Syracuse was just the beginning years.
What is your favorite place in Nantucket?
Oh, that's actually a hard one. I love Great Point. I love the beaches, just to go out and actually sit and be able to look at the waves. There's really not any one particular place. I like downtown because I spent most of my life downtown. Uh, I don't know. I think I've pretty much fallen in love with all of Nantucket. Like I always would say, if you first came to Nantucket, even now, and you go drive up Main Street, you would end up probably falling in love with it, and it wouldn't seem any different than it did to me, 40, 50 years ago. As far as the actual feeling of Nantucket, I don't think that's really changed. I think that people that really love Nantucket have taken great care of it and have a great respect for it.
What made you decide to stay working at the Nantucket Looms?
Why did I? Well, I started in September of 1974, and I went to work for two gentlemen, Bill Euler and Andy Oates, who were not only life partners, but business partners. And they had the shop Nantucket Looms. They started it April 1st, 1968, at 16 Main Street. And 6 years after they had started it, one of the weavers, Sam Caston, asked me if I would come and work for 2 weeks at the end of the season. And years ago, there was this play or a movie that was called The Man Who Came for Dinner and basically never left. Well, that was me. I was hired for 2 weeks, and 40 years later, I was there, still there. And I did make a decision that when Bill offered me the job, I was a terrible weaver, so I didn't weave. But I was really good on the floor, on the sales floor, and obviously I like to talk. It was a real 5-day-a-week job, and from 9 until 5. So I did, and I realized that after the years that I was with it, it was a really wonderful job. Bill and Andy were very, very generous people to Nantucket community and to the artisans, and they were very supportive of people. And I learned through them how to really, almost what you want to call it, pay it forward, that they realized people's potential, and it became a really wonderful place for artists to have a sort of like a jump start.
Can you tell me a little bit more about Andy and Bill and how they affected your life?
Oh, they were the most amazing men, especially Bill, to me, because there was Sam Caston, who was in charge of under Andy Oates. Andy Oates was what they call a master weaver. And Bill and Andy met during the time that Walter Beinecke was changing the Ocean House, which is now the JC House, and they would stay at Madame Toutine's house on Fair Street, which is the wood box. And Bill and Andy, Mrs. Toutine left for that winter of 19, I think it was 66 or 65, maybe even earlier, and let Bill and Andy stay there. Well, they met Walter and Marianne Beinecke because they ran the wood box and kept it open, and Walter and Marianne would come and stay there to check on the progress of the Jared Coffin House. And one night after dinner, Walter asked Andy and Bill to sit down with them. And Walter asked Andy, "What if you had your wish, what would it be?" And Andy said, "I would like to have a weaving studio and do production weaving." And Nantucket Looms basically was born. Walter wanted to take Nantucket and make it a real world-class destination instead of a sleepy little island 30 miles at sea. He wanted to bring it into into the 60s and 70s, almost like Williamsburg, Virginia was. And he did, but he did it very, very carefully, and he did it really, really nicely. But just like anything, people don't like change, and it was a really, really tough thing to sell to Nantucket. Walter wasn't particularly thought of highly because they thought, oh, they're changing it, and he's going to, take it down to rags and ruins. But he didn't. And he gave Bill and Andy a chance then to start this. After they realized that they might have a good thing, Walter gave them the opportunity to start Nantucket Looms, which they did, like I said, in April 1st, 1968. And Bill then, 6 years later, when I started to work there, he realized that I was young enough to be able to be sort of molded into, he's like my mentor. He was as wonderful as basically my mother and father. I respected him. He gave me a lot of leeway, but I realized, I had to really step up to the plate and do things that I've never really been exposed to before. And so he taught me a lot. And after 18 years with him, in April of 1993, actually in February of 1993, Bill and Andy took me up in the office and they just said, okay, we're retiring April 1st. And I was like, are you kidding? I mean, I sort of knew someday it was going to happen, but I didn't know it was going to be then. And I was like, oh, now what do I do? And so I started, and they passed it on to me. They owned the building on Main Street, 16 Main Street, which is now where Ralph Lauren is. And they just wanted to retire. And I go, well, how do I find another Liz? How do I do that? But in 1996, into my life came Stephanie Hall, and she was the Liz I needed. And then the year before, Becky Perriner actually apprenticed under Andy Oates, and she went to Rhode Island School of Design, and she stayed on. So I all of a sudden had a wonderful, real core to the shop, and the three of us really took it and sort of ran with it. That's when I decided to take it into more of a really eclectic, different store where we were able to showcase not only local artisans, but then I would do buying trips to New York and Nashville and do antiquing. So that's how it started to change. Probably 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, my daughter, Bess Clark, and Stephanie Hall and Becky Perriner basically took over the reins of Nantucket Looms. I went and did exactly what Bill and Andy did, is I paid it forward. They realized that Nantucket was wonderful, but it was only really strong for maybe 12 to 18 weeks out of the year. So they realized that we had a brick and mortar store, but we really needed to brand Nantucket Looms and, like you said, collaborate, get it out there. And they've done that with social media, Instagram, Facebook. They just had an amazing opportunity with Lyft, which is not Uber, but Lyft, which is that car service. And Lyft got in touch with Nantucket Looms and ordered, it's a cotton boat neck sweater, and they've ordered it as their uniform for all their drivers, which is pretty cool. I then needed to become involved in something else, and lo and behold, I found my next career with the hospital thrift shop.
I have heard you have like a major role in the Small Friends School.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about
Oh,
that?
thank you for asking. When Bess was little, just like everybody, they used to have to really scramble for childcare. So back in 1988, Ann Bratt and David Bratt, along with Mrs. Grossman and a few other people, had this idea of coming up with a year-round child care center. And Bess was beyond that by that time, but move forward to 1988, and I had another young daughter named Claire, and I was back in the same position of like, where do you go? How do you find somebody to take care of it, private daycare, nanny or whatever. So I became really involved with Small Friends because of Claire. And I started sitting on the board, but then realized too that it was something that was struggling in the beginning because it was in the basement of the Congregational Church. And in order for it to really thrive, we realized that we needed to really build and have a real brick and mortar place that we could call our own. So we were able to buy years ago on Nobodere Farm Road a piece of property. And we were actually, I think, one of the first places to be there. Besides, it was across the street from, there was a miniature golf course. And it was before, I think, Sun Island was there. But Small Friends, we decided that we're going to try to make and raise the money to build a facility. So how we did, and as one of the big fundraisers, Nantucket Looms sponsored what we called the event under the tent. Because what we did is we brought in a real group of wonderful artisans from all over the country that would do American crafts, to then move it ahead, and we decided, okay, we're going to build the building. We had to make a decision, and we did. I was on the building committee along with Barbara Varvalo. Barbara Varvalo and I worried for years how we're going to get this building built, but we did it. And we built through a lot of support from a lot of private donations, from people that really believed in me, and really, which was really wonderful, because I'm not one to want to go out and say, we need to raise $4 million to build this building. But people were really wonderful and supportive, and they did, and they made pledges. And we built the first green LEED certified, it was a gold building, which is for environmentally correct. And we were the first child care center in the country to actually open our doors with a LEED certification, which is pretty exciting. Small Friends takes babies from 3 months all the way up to early to kindergarten age. And it's a year-round, full-time, like 7:15 to 5:15 center. And it's not just where they sit in front of a TV, it's an actually wonderful learning center. So that, and then move ahead to my Stephanie and Becky and my daughter Bess. They became very, very involved with Small Friends too, because lo and behold, their children needed to go to daycare or childcare. So it's worked out really, really well.
Thank you for taking the time to come. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, you've made it very easy for me to talk. I appreciate it. So, and I wish you luck, and I think it's great.
My favorite thing I learned about Liz Winship is that she's a very positive person and she has a good way of looking towards things.